Like family, band members have different personalities and some do clash. Being in a band is not just about creating and playing music together. While it can indeed be a fierce creative force, a group that stands together with a common purpose, a band is also about relationships, and sometimes things just don't work out. As Aerosmith's Joe Perry once famously said to Steven Tyler, just because we're in a band together doesn't mean we have to be friends. And he was probably right. Oasis. Sibling rivalry is real, but Liam and Noel Gallagher just took things to a whole different level of animosity. They argued constantly, on and off stage, until they went separate ways. I hope one day I can smash the fuck out of him with a fucking Rickenbacker. Right on his nose, and then he does the same to me. Liam once said about his brother, Oasis hasn't reunited to this day. Guns N' Roses. From sacking its original drummer Steven Adler to core member Izzy Stradlin leaving the band, Guns N' Roses is no stranger to drama. But there's a particular feud that dictated the end between Axl Rose and Slash. The band became big in the late 80s and then huge in the 90s, and so did Axl's antics, such as showing up ridiculously late to shows. Tensions grew within the band and it was soon the end, though against all odds, Guns N' Roses reunited in 2016. The Sex Pistols. The iconic English punk rock band reunited in 1996, almost 2 decades after Johnny Rotten decided to call it quits. But the previous animosity between bandmates continued. We still hate each other with a vengeance, but we found a common cause, and that's your money, he said in a press conference. The Pistols frontman didn't even spare the late band member Sid Vicious. Sid was nothing more than an empty coat hanger to fill an empty spot on stage, he said. The Smashing Pumpkins. The alternative rock band has had its fair share of drama, with the death of a keyboard player, overdoses, and the band members leaving and coming back again. But according to frontman Billy Corgan, the band's guitarist is to blame. The truth of the matter is that guitarist James Iha broke up the Smashing Pumpkins. Not me, not drummer Jimmy Chamberlain, but James. Did it help that bassist Darcy Retzky was fired for being a mean-spirited drug addict who refused to get help? No, that didn't help keep the band together. Not at all. Aerosmith. Joe Perry and Steven Tyler, a.k.a. the Toxic Twins, have an amazing musical chemistry, but they're such polar opposite personalities that they've had a lot of love-hate relationships over the years. The Kinks. Siblings argue, and Ray and Dave Davies are no exception. Ray's an asshole, sucks me dry of ideas and emotions and creativity, said Dave. Pink Floyd. Growing tensions between David Gilmour and Roger Waters dictated the end of the band and the beginning of a couple of lawsuits, too. The Beach Boys. There were no such thing as good vibrations in the band, especially between Brian Wilson and Mike Love. I think some lawsuits happened there, too. Journey. Frontman Steve Perry left, but Journey continued to struggle with the band's musical direction. In 2017, Perry was present when the band was inducted into the Hall of Fame, but they still performed without him. Ouch. Van Halen. There was always tension between Eddie Van Halen and David Lee Roth, so much so that even years later he accused the singer of being childish. Roth's perception of himself is different than who he is in reality. We're not in our 20s anymore, we're in our 60s. Act like you're 60, the late guitarist said. Kiss. Original members Ace Frehley and Peter Criss left the band in the 80s due to clashes with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. Many nasty words have been exchanged between them, with Stanley even accusing him of being a racist. The Everly Brothers. They hung on for about 20 years until it all went pear-shaped real quick. Reportedly, Don showed up drunk to a show, and after screwing up the lyrics, Phil smashed a guitar on his head and walked off stage. They briefly reunited in the 80s, but they remained mostly estranged. Metallica. 2 former Metallica members were alienated and somehow ostracized by the rest of the band. The first one being guitarist Dave Mustaine, who was sacked. He went on to form Megadeth, so maybe that was a good thing in the end. And the second was Jason Newsted. After the tragic death of bassist Clifton Burton, Newsted had big shoes to fill, and the band was grieving, and he inadvertently paid for it. The Ramones. Their famous song, The KKK Took My Baby Away, is about guitarist Johnny Ramone stealing singer Joey Ramone's girlfriend. That says something about the relationship between the two, right? Simon and Garfunkel. Art Garfunkel still blames Paul Simon for breaking up the duo. The two couldn't even agree on the songs being released as part of the album Bridge Over Troubled Water, and any subsequent reunions never really lasted long. The Clash. By the end of their career, the English rockers were struggling to find musical direction, with each member pulling into a different genre. Mick Jones and Joe Strummer were barely talking at the time the band split. The Eagles. The ever-changing lineup proved how toxic things were in the band. In their final show, band members were actually threatening each other on mic. The Police. If Sting comes across as a bit of a control freak, that's because he probably is. At least according to his bandmates, the frontman eventually called it quits in 1984. It wasn't my intention to punish Stewart and Andy in any way. I was following my instincts, said Sting about him pulling the plug. Queensryche. According to the frontman Jeff Tate, the band told his wife she would no longer be managing them. We went on to do the show, and Scott looks at me and he smirks and says, "We just fired your whole family and you're next." I just lost it. I tried to punch him. I don't think I landed a punch before somebody grabbed me and hauled me to the side, he told Rolling Stone. Though the band refutes Tate's account of events and claims the frontman's attack was unprovoked.